The prop I'm covering today is the witch's broom from The Wizard of Oz. I originally tried to get a stick, an actual stick from my backyard that could actually be the staff of the broom, but I couldn't find one I like. So what I did is this one was actually cut out of a 2x4. It's a little heavier than I would have liked, but that's okay. For the end, I had several cut saplings from my red bud tree, and so I cut those up, hot glued them, and then I just wrapped the string around here to give it that broom look. Now, I wouldn't be doing a video about this prop if that's all it was. So in The Wizard of Oz, the witch has to shoot fireballs. So this broom actually does that.
Here, Scarecrow. Want to play ball?
It does it in the confines that are safe for theater and stage use. And I'm going to get into that a little bit. But the business end here is right here. Underneath this gaff tape here is a battery pack. And it is just 2 AAAs in series. I also then installed 2 buttons, one on this side, one on that side. And to shoot the fireball, both have to be pressed at the same time. So that way it reduces the fireball going off prematurely. So I just drilled holes for the 2 buttons, and then I have other holes going with the wood to bring their wiring through underneath all the bristles. And you can see some of the wiring in the back there to the battery pack. And then it's covered in tape in there, but there's a hole the wiring goes down to get to the back at the end of the barrel there. At the end of the barrel is a filament that when the 2 buttons get pressed, gets hot. And you can see it glowing back there. And that's what sets off the charge. So now let's start talking a little bit about safety. Very early on, a friend of mine suggested that we treat it, even though it wasn't technically a gun, it couldn't really hurt you. We decided to treat it like a gun. The only way we could think of it actually hurting you is if you put your eye right up against the barrel and shot it. In times where we had misfires, I did what I just did here, and I would use my phone to look down the barrel. Because, yeah, if your eye was right up against that, looking down that barrel, trying to figure out what was going on, and it went off, that would be bad. I am going to take it apart here in a little bit to show you what the barrel and the firing mechanism looks like. When you make yours, if you make one, you want to be able to remove the barrel, because I have found it gets dirty. There is a black soot that builds up over time. Also with the batteries, I found you wanted to change them about every other show. The batteries running that filament in the back actually uses a lot of the battery. All right, here's the barrel mechanism removed. And the main part of it here is this brass tube I just had laying around. Measures about 5 inches. The diameter looks to be just short of 3/8 of an inch. It worked well for me. I suspect other sizes will work as well. Also, I don't think it actually has to be metal. I mean, if you can make it out of conduit or a copper pipe or something, that probably works the best. But given the pressures were involved here and the low fire that we're dealing with, you could probably use a PVC pipe, to be honest. The other part of this barrel here is this glow plug, the filament. So the glow plug is actually from the RC industry. So here's what I had. Traxxas is actually pretty well-known name brand among RCers. They use glow plugs. Instead of spark plugs, they got these things. And basically when a current is put upon it, the filament in there glows red hot, which we saw earlier. And that's another reason you want your barrel to be removable, is in the event the glow plug burns out. It never happened to me in my run here, but reading RC message boards, they do occasionally go out. let me take this apart a little further and I'll show you how this goes on. So here we have the glow plug removed, and the glow plug, it being screwed in actually held my ground wire here. So what I have is at the end here is I have a nut, and that nut is glued onto the brass tube with some really good epoxy cold weld, essentially. I'll leave the link to both this glow plug and the nut in the description there, because the nut and the glow plug have a specific pitch. It's a not uncommon pitch, but I could not find that pitch of nut anywhere in any hardware store by me, so I had to special order it. So yeah, the glow plug is just, twisted down in there, and then it's used to hold the grounding wire. I guess now, since we're talking about it, the other wire attachment has to be made at the tip of the glow plug, and you can't touch any of what would be the ground. So the tip is kind of your positive or your hot point for the battery hookup. To do that, since I have it taken apart now, what I did is I have a hole. I don't know if you can see it in there, but there's a hole there that goes down to where the glow plug is when the barrel is installed. And at the end of that, I have this little guy. So it's just a little miniature key ring. And what I do is, using a screwdriver and a needle nose pliers, I'll slip that on to that tip. And that's how I make that connection, because that's a nice secure connection. Also, you could use like an alligator clip or something. I just didn't have one. You can see the hole on the other side of the batteries there. That's where that glow plug will end up being. And then I just need, I'll run the ground wire out through that hole, and then I'll use that little key ring to attach to that little nub there. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this barrel, because that's actually, we just got done with our run, and I want to clean it out in case it ever gets used again. Here we are looking down the access hole. You can see the batteries there, and down there at the end of my ground wire, you can see something silver. That is the top of that glow plug, and we're going to use, again, as I mentioned, this little key ring. I'm just going to use the needle nose pliers and push it onto it, and that's how we make that connection. And then we can put gaff tape over it again when we're ready to go. Okay, let's talk about fire. So I used 2 items to pull this off. And there's actually, if you look up do-it-yourself fireball thrower or shooter, there's other YouTube videos out there that kind of break this down anyway, if you want to look at those as well. But essentially, we have fire cotton. Fire cotton burns almost instantly. There are actually some products that use a flint, like from a cigarette lighter or a camp lantern, and all it takes is one little spark from that flint to hit this stuff, and it's going to go up, and it goes very fast, has very little residue, but essentially that's what's going to give us the pop. For the fire effect, we're actually using something called fire paper. So we had our fire cotton. This is fire paper. The fire paper actually burns a little slower, not much, but enough. This is very typical. Both of these, in particular, the fire paper, is what you see magicians use a lot. Crumple up one of these, put it in your hand, and light it on fire. It burns so quickly, it never has the chance to get hot enough to start anything else on fire. That's why magicians use it, and that's why the stage uses it too. And I'm going to show you how I load the fireball thrower, whatever, because it matters. Get my paper out, and then I'm going to pull some from the back too. I always like to use there we go. So this is going to be our main charge. I always like to put a few strips in the barrel first, because that seems to get lit a little easier from that filament. So when we go to load, we're gonna load these first. And then we have our main charge. And I'm telling you, you don't need very much cotton. As a matter of fact, you can have too much, and what happens is when the cotton goes off, it puffs out and blows out the flame. And we don't want that because our effect, remember, the cotton's just to blow the fire out the tube. The effect that the audience will see will actually be the burning paper. And we want that paper burning. And so that's, I mean, if you notice here, this might even be too much. I mean, all you need is just a little pinch. And actually, I'm going to tear off a little bit because I think this might be a little bit too much. So we'll put this back in here. I think it's suffice to say that you need to store this stuff very carefully. You know, just as a precaution, you should have a fire extinguisher already on stage anyway. But, you know, for this, again, very low risk, but you always want to be playing on the safe side. So what we're going to do now with this cotton, so the main thing is we want to make sure the paper gets lit before the cotton does. Because if the cotton gets lit first, it's going to just go off and it's going to puff. It's going to puff this guy out the barrel and it will never light the paper. So what I've been doing is I like to roll almost like a little cigarette here. I like to roll the cotton up into a cylinder of the paper. This guarantees that the paper is going to get lit first. Once the paper gets lit, it of course is going to light the cotton, and then the cotton is going to puff out the fireball. So what I like to do on the ends is this end, kind of like to fold over a little bit. And then this end, I like to twirl up in the direction of our rolling here. Kind of like a Tootsie Roll wrapper. There we have our little little packet of energy here. So, all right. So now we are ready to load. And I've done this, and I think what happens is at the end of the barrel, you saw the filament is not very exposed. And so what this does, I think, is make it more likely that there's actually paper pressing against that filament at the end of this barrel. As a ramrod, I've just been using it as a pencil, and I use the eraser side usually. There we go. And I'm going to push that all the way to the end, and I'm going to pack it just a little bit for now. So now we're going to put our charge in there, and this, you know, it does not need to be tight because, well, we're going to pack it anyway. So we'll just get it in there starting. And we'll use our ramrod here. So the thing about this is, what we've noticed is you need to ramrod it actually a lot harder than you think you might. And the reason is because I'm really packing it here. I really want to make sure that fire paper is against that filament or as close to it so that it ignites when it gets hot. What we've done during our production is we had a couple misfires. We repacked it and it went off. So what that taught us is, you know, I would load this at the beginning of the show or the beginning of the second act. But because so much time had gone by, I think what happens is that fire paper, after it's packed, starts, you know, loosening up again, you know, and the broom's being used on stage. So what we always did is we repacked it right before they went on for the scene where it was going to be used. And after we started doing that, it seemed to work a lot better. So, all right, I'm going to set up so you can see what this looks like. I'm actually going to leave the lights on here so that you actually see how bright it is, you know, when it's going to be used on stage in most cases. And I've had this thing fire well anywhere from 4 to probably 10 feet. But yeah, anyway, let's see what this one does. So 3, 2, 1. That was a good one. Actually, it flew about, I don't know, flew actually about 4 feet past the pool table here. The key is, I should say too, when you go to press those buttons, you press and hold. And then that way that glow plug warms up, especially if the batteries are going dead. You can still get a good fire off of that glow plug. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this helps someone make this, if that's what you got to do, or some other effect. And just as a reminder, be safe with this stuff. So happy prop making.